Hi, this is Chuck Sutherland at the Real Estate Expert Summit 2020. This featured speaker we have now is Mike Wolf. And Mike is an international traveler, and he invests in single family properties, tax deeds, tax liens, overages, and I'm gonna let him explain that as we talk. But I have heard about Mike for the last 4 years. I had not, I don't spend a lot of time in the single family world, but I finally learned about Mike when we were involved in a cruise, a cruise together with other people. And Mike, welcome to the summit.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, Chuck. Good to see you again.
Our privilege, my privilege and our privilege. Mike, I'm going to let you just talk about what you do, the range of what you do, and you do. I know you do teach some classes, so what you teach, and I'll just interrupt you now and then with a question. But I'm going to let you, because I ask the question as if I were in the audience myself, and then I'll just interrupt and you can answer it as we go. Okay, does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to interrupt anytime, because if you have a question, chances are the audience has the same question. So interrupt anytime. Happy to answer the questions.
Awesome. Thank you for being on the summit.
Thanks for having me. So I'll start off with introducing myself. As Chuck mentioned, I'm Mike Wolf. I've been investing for around 31 years, and pretty much done every strategy known to man over that 31-year period. And one of the things that I like to do is, I've obviously seen a lot of cycles, and I often have switched my strategy based on what's going on in the economy. And of course, right now, with COVID, you can't really shut down the world economy and expect that there's not going to be any repercussions from that. So it's going to create some really unique opportunities. And so what I want to leave you with today is the top strategies that are working right now, whether you're in single family, multifamily, commercial. I'm going to tell you where I think the biggest opportunities are going to be, the things to stay away from in this type of economy that we're heading into, and how you can not only survive but thrive during these crazy times. And by the way, first I'll tell you how I got started, because I started off, I know a lot of people, they tune into these real estate programs. They say, oh, I wish I had some money. If I only had money, I could get started in real estate. I'm going to teach you a bunch of ways to make money, even if you don't have a whole lot of cash. Because I know right now, there's a lot of people reinventing themselves, and maybe they lost their job, and they don't know if their job is still going to be there when the dust settles after COVID hopefully disappears. And so I want to teach you some of the things that I had to learn, because when I first started 31 years ago, I had less than zero. I was a starving ex-university student trying to pay off my student loans, and I had no money to play with. So I'm going to teach you some creative ways to get in the game. So the question that I get asked the most these days since COVID, I've been on so many summits and podcasts and online, online events more than ever since COVID started. And the one question that comes up every single time is, Mike, hey, what's going to happen with the economy? What's going to happen with real estate? And so, as I mentioned, you can't really shut down a global economy and expect that things are going to be the same as how you left it before. And so we're going to see a lot of changes. Right now, I'm actually sitting I'm from Calgary, Canada. I do all my investing in the US, but I'm actually back in Canada where my daughter and my grandkids are. And right now in downtown, I'm in a office building, which is probably 90% vacant. And that's one of the trends that we're going to see. So a lot of the commercial buildings, especially office space, a lot of companies right now are realizing that, hey, our employees can work from home. And so some of the things that we're starting to see is that a lot of empty downtown office space. We're also seeing a lot of people moving from the city center, and they're heading out to the suburbs. And we're seeing that in a lot of cities right now. People are leaving, they're realizing, hey, I'm not probably going to have to go back to an office anymore. I can work from home. So why don't we go a little bit further from the city center where it's cleaner, quieter, you get a much bigger home for less money, and it's a better place to raise the family. And so that's one of the trends that we're going to see. And so I wouldn't be particularly a big fan of buying some commercial stuff, such as office space, such as also retail. We're going to see a lot of, we're seeing J.C. Penney going bankrupt. We're seeing a ton of restaurants that shut down that won't be reopening. People are going online, and things like Amazon. That's where the winners are. This bricks and mortar stuff for commercial. Some of it you got to be really careful with. The other thing I'd really be avoiding is a lot of the more expensive cities. I think what we're going to see, and we're already seeing it, is people are leaving the more expensive places, and they're heading one where there's jobs, and two where it's a more affordable cost of living. And so you really want to be careful what markets you're picking to jump into. So imagine you wake up and you live in Manhattan, and you're paying $5,000 a month to live in your one-bedroom apartment, and you don't have a job. That is not a very sustainable lifestyle for most people. So the people, New York is already starting to shrink, and people are starting to go to places like Florida and the Carolinas and Atlanta. On the West Coast, I'm seeing people leaving California because the taxes are so high, cost of living so high. And I personally know at least 5 or 6 people in the last 2 months that have moved to places such as Texas. They've moved to Phoenix, Vegas, even Idaho. So you want to be in the path of progress. If you're in single family homes, or even if you're in multifamily properties, you want to be heading in the path of progress. You want to get there before the mass exodus gets there. And so you need to really look at what markets you want to get into. But really, I think the big wins coming up are going to be in the places, like I said, that are affordable and where there's jobs being created. And for those of you who know me, you know that I'm very heavily invested in Atlanta, Georgia. That's actually one of my favorite markets, and been there for about 8 years. I wish I could say I had, 8 years ago, I knew there was going to be this pandemic and people are going to be moving there like crazy. That's not the truth. But the truth of the matter is, it's been a great market. I'm going to tell you what I do to pick a market, by the way. So one of the things that I would be doing right now is, if you're looking for buy and hold properties, what we're going to see is probably similar to 2007, 2008, where a whole lot of homeowners are going to unfortunately lose their properties, and they're going to go from home ownership into renting, at least temporarily. And so what we're going to see is as a lot of people become renters, there's going to be upward pressure on the rents in the cities that are affordable, where people are moving to. And people like myself, I sell turnkey properties in Atlanta. People like myself, obviously, as the rents go up, will likely be increasing our prices. So if you're looking to get into a rental property, you really need to pick your market properly, though. And so I'm going to give you the 3 things that I look at when I pick a buy and hold market. The first thing I look at, and most people don't even know to look at this, is the market that you're getting into, is it landlord friendly or is it tenant friendly? And if we look at a place like California, for example, it's one of the most tenant friendly places there is. So even before COVID started, we were seeing, tenants being able to stay in a property for 12, sometimes 18 months without making any rent payments before they get kicked out. They know how to work the system. They keep putting off the court dates, and they can become a nightmare for you. And so I don't know about you. I don't know about you, Chuck. Have you ever had a bank say, "Hey, I hear your tenants aren't paying. You don't have to pay us"? I don't know about you. I've never had that happen.
No, they never say that. The fact is, they say you have to pay it all off, is what happens.
Exactly. And so, it makes it very, very tough to run a business. And by the way, if you're a real estate investor, you need to run it like a business. It's very hard to run a business where you have property taxes, insurance, maybe a mortgage payment, whatever other bills that you have to pay coming out of your bank account every month, but you have no money coming in. So you've got to get that income coming in. And so you need to pick, once again, a market where it's very, very landlord friendly. So if you contrast California with Atlanta, which is my favorite market, as I mentioned, Atlanta, we can typically get rid of a bad tenant usually in about 3 weeks. And so if we can get rid of a bad tenant in 3 weeks, and that's if they know how to play the system, they'll be there for 3 weeks. Sometimes you get rid of them quicker. There's a pretty good chance that you won't miss a beat. You'll get rid of them. You'll do whatever cleanup you need to do. And if you're really lucky, you can have a tenant in for the following month. So that's the number one thing I look at, because if you're in the wrong market, doesn't matter how good all the other numbers look. If you're not actually getting rent, it doesn't matter what your potential rent is. It's the rent that you actually get. So that's the number one thing. Number 2 thing, and this is how I made most of my money over these past 31 years, is I want appreciation. I want that property that I buy to go up tremendously, because that's how you get this big lump sum of cash that allows you to buy more real estate without having to keep going to a job to get more money. And so, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that puts a upward pressure on a market is obviously population growth. And where are people moving to? I already gave you a clue. They're moving where there's jobs and where it's affordable. So people are going to go, we use that example, that person who wakes up in Manhattan with no job, with that high rent payment and a very high cost of living to live in Manhattan. Where are they going to go? They're going to go somewhere where, one, they can get jobs, and two, where the cost of living is low, so they can get, back on their feet, get started, and start getting on with their lives. And so the things that cause the population growth are typically going to be jobs. And so go where the jobs are, go where the population is growing. And if you get that appreciation, it makes up for a whole lot. A lot of people go straight for the third thing, which is cash flow. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I just want to finish the second thing. So when we're looking at jobs, where are the businesses going to go that create employment for your tenants? They're going to go, the businesses are going to go where the government is very tax friendly to them. And Georgia is one of the friendliest places to businesses. They give them tax breaks, knowing that these companies are going to hire a lot of people. So if you look at Atlanta, it's head office to Coca-Cola, Turner Broadcasting, Home Depot, Delta Airlines, the list goes on and on and on. So two things you need to notice. One, there's a lot of different businesses there, but more importantly, they're very diversified businesses. Because we know that, coming out of COVID, travel is going to be, Delta Airlines is probably not going to be at their finest point. They're going to be struggling to get people on flights, and they're probably going to be continuing to lay off their employees, unfortunately. But the good news is, because Atlanta has a diverse job creation, the people that work at Delta Airlines can go to Home Depot or Coca-Cola or somewhere else. So another company that's hiring there. And so if you're a landlord and your tenant loses their job, but they can get another job, maybe you might have to, they might be a little bit delayed on a payment or two, but after that, they'll get back in the game, start paying you again, and you're good. So that's the number two thing. The number three thing you want to look at, and this is what most people go to first, is the cash flow. While I'm holding this property, waiting for it to go up, how much money will I be able to get every month relative to what I have to pay to buy that property? And so a lot of people go straight for that, and it leads them kind of down a rabbit hole that sometimes takes them to not great markets. For example, if you look at a place like, I'm going to pick on Detroit for a second. No offense to anybody who lives in Detroit, but I actually invested there, and that was a very, very big mistake in the last recession, and didn't do very well there. But in any case, if you go to a market like that, it looks really good on paper. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the amount of rent you're going to get relative to the purchase price, it looks amazing. But that's what we call paper returns. And what a paper return is something that looks awesome on paper that you're never going to see in real life. And so when you go to a market like Detroit, Detroit's known for automotives. And automotives back in the olden days meant Ford, GM, Chrysler. Automotives in the future, what that looks like is Uber and Apple and other tech companies. This is now a tech play. It's not what it used to be. And so even if they reinvent themselves and even if people start buying cars again, the type of cars that they're going to be buying are not going to be the type of cars that they used to buy back in the 50s when Detroit was flying high. So you're doing the exact opposite of getting in the path of progress. You're getting to a place where the population is shrinking and people are leaving in search of employment. And so you got to be really, really careful. A lot of times those numbers, like I said, they look amazing on paper. It's very tempting. It even tempted me. I got in, bought 3 properties, was lucky to get my money back. What happens when you get to a market like that where there's very high unemployment? First of all, like I said, opposite of Atlanta, where it's all one industry. So if people get laid off at Ford, chances are they're not going to get a job at Chrysler or GM or any other automotive company either. So a lot of people, though, they'll say, oh, I get way more cash flow in Detroit. Well, in theory, on paper, yes, you can. In reality, you're not going to get that. That's never going to materialize, because if people don't have a job, that even if they want to pay you, they can't pay you. The other thing that I found out very quickly when I got into that market is that when people don't have jobs, guess what they do? They vandalize homes to make money, and they'd steal the copper, they'd steal hot water tanks, furnaces, anything that wasn't nailed down, and even things that were nailed down, they would steal. And I had all 3 of my properties vandalized. They were all in different neighborhoods. All 3 got vandalized. And actually, the only thing that almost good that happened is my property manager called me up one day and said, hey, did you know there's a car in the driveway? Any idea? Because the home was vacant. There was a car sitting in the driveway, and somebody had abandoned a stolen car in our driveway. I didn't even get to keep it. So that was the closest I came to making money in Detroit. So you have to be very, very careful when you're picking your market, and don't get caught just looking at the cash on cash returns and forgetting those first 2 things. You want to look at those first 2 first, and then get to the cash on cash returns last. And if you do that, you're going to be a lot safer. You're actually going to get a lot closer to the returns you're expecting, instead of these really attractive numbers that don't really exist in real life. So if you're looking to buy and hold, I think that's a very safe strategy. I think anything that's really long term is safe. Anything that's kind of medium term, I would not be doing. For example, I would not be doing a development project. I wouldn't buy a piece of land saying, oh, I'm going to go build something that's going to be finished in a year or two from now. So much can change in the economy while you're doing that. And I witnessed a lot of that back in the last recession. I was doing a lot of foreclosures in Las Vegas during the last recession. And there were a whole bunch of buildings that were half built. And there were all these cranes on the horizon, but no work getting done because the banks refused. Originally they said, oh, we'll lend you X amount of dollars. Well, as the market started to collapse and the value of the properties kept going down, the banks kept clawing back how much money they were willing to lend. And a lot of people got stuck in these development projects that never ever, and still to this day, a lot of them are not finished yet. So be very, very careful if you're doing anything that's like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years into the future. I'd stay away from that right now. But here's where I think some of the biggest gains are going to be. So right now, as many of you know, there's a moratorium on foreclosures. And so I think that's great. I mean, I'd hate to see the banks kicking people out on the streets right now, and having people homeless in the middle of a pandemic. That would not be good. However, we know that this moratorium is not going to last forever. And as I mentioned early on, one of my favorite strategies is something called tax deeds. And I'm going to explain what that is because I know not everybody understands it. A tax deed, when somebody hasn't paid their property taxes in a number of years, usually 2, 3, 4 years, the county eventually will put those homes up on the auction block. The county needs that money for their police department, for their schools, for their fire department, etc. Eventually, they're going to put those homes up on the auction block. And I see, one of my favorite auctions takes place in Harris County, which is the greater Houston, Texas area. And that auction has actually been shut down now for like 5 or 6 months. And normally on a typical, these auctions take place once a month, at least in Harris County, once a month on the first Tuesday. And every month we see literally hundreds, if not thousands of properties changing hands. So you multiply the number of properties that normally change hands times 5 or 6, and then you add on top of it the fact that the county hasn't been foreclosing on anybody, the banks aren't foreclosing on anybody. And by the way, there's tax deeds that take place at this auction, and under the same roof at the same time, there's bank auctions taking place too, bank foreclosures as well, all taking place under the same roof. And like I said, these have been shut down. So now you take these thousands of properties times 5 or 6 or 7 or however many months those auctions are shut down for, and add that as a backlog, plus you add all the homes that would have got foreclosed on if there wasn't a moratorium, add that to the mix, and there's going to be an amazing opportunity for people that know how to do this strategy to make a lot of money. And so I've had students at that very auction. I had one student pick up a single family home for $7,200. That wasn't the down payment, by the way. That was the purchase price of the home. It was worth probably $90,000 to $100,000 at the time he bought it, and it rented for $900 a month. And he kept it. I think he still has that as a rental property. And as you can do the math, if you pay $7,200, you're getting $900 a month rent. Doesn't take you long to get all your money back and then some. So that's going to be a really good strategy going forward. There's also, every month when that auction is open, and by the way, these auctions take place all over the United States. It's not just Harris County. That just happens to be my favorite one, but they're all over the United States. But every month, around 3 weeks to 4 weeks before the auction takes place, the county publishes a list of properties that are going up on the auction block. And a whole bunch of people, of course, get excited. They go to the auction and bid on these properties. And that's great. I recommend you do that, but they're missing out on another opportunity. And I call this a trifecta of real estate. So with that very, very same list, when I see that list, to me, that list is a list of people that are in trouble. And I don't like the term real estate investor. I like the term problem solver. These are people that have a problem. The problem is they're going to lose their home in 3 to 4 weeks, and they need a solution. And if we can be good problem solvers and go and find something that is a win for them and a win for us, we can get that property before it ever even goes to auction, number one. Or two, sometimes we can even prevent it from going to auction. So let me give you an example. Back in 2007, 2006, 2007, 2008, I had a company called Foreclosure Fixers. And, I'm sure you've all seen these things in the mail. We buy homes, we buy ugly homes, we pay cash for homes. Those postcards you get, and most people have a stack of them. I came at it from a very different approach. I sent out marketing materials that said, I can help stop the foreclosure. And I took the time to learn the foreclosure laws inside and out. I hired an attorney, learned everything there was to know about foreclosure laws. And back in those days, I would do it differently now. I'd probably use a little bit more technology and hire people. Back in those days, I would actually go and sit across a table from somebody who was unfortunately in pre-foreclosure, meaning that the banks or the county had already told them, hey, you're losing your home unless you can resolve this by this certain cutoff date. So they were in pre-foreclosure. I go sit across a table from them. And I was always amazed that so many people, they had no idea about the foreclosure process, and they were terrified. And they thought somebody was going to come into their home like 2 a.m. and kick them out, kick them and their kids out, toss all their stuff on the front lawn. They thought that was going to be their fate, and they're going to be homeless. And so I sit down across the table from them, and there's 2 different types of people that would call me. So type 1 are sometimes bad things happen to good people. And we're seeing a lot of that right now. Nobody chose to have COVID come along, make them lose their jobs, and so they couldn't afford their mortgage payment. So many people that have had really good credit, would never dream of missing a payment, have always paid on time. All of a sudden, when you don't have a job to go to, what are you going to do? They have no choice. And so those people are people that sometimes I would go to them and I would be a money lender for them. So a lot of these people, they lost their job, they got in arrears, they got behind, and now they've got a job again. So they can make the monthly payments, they just can't pay that lump sum to get themselves off the pre-foreclosure list. And so I would sometimes loan the money and help stop the foreclosure, help them stay in their home, and then they would pay me back in installments. And by the way, I know some of you listening are saying, well, I don't have that kind of money. You're just going to loan people that kind of money. Well, neither did I a lot of the times, because when you do a number of these and you're loaning out big chunks of cash, your money gets tied up. But I would go and I'd find, I'd get lines of credit, borrow the money for really cheap, and loan it out at a higher amount. I did an equity takeout on my residence, borrowed that money for cheap, loaned it at a higher amount. Found other people with cash, offered them X amount, and loaned it out at Y amount. So it doesn't have to be your money, just so you know. You don't have to have, be a multi-zillionaire to do this. You can find other money for cheap or cheaper and loan it out. So we managed to keep a lot of people in their homes. But then there were other people, and this is a second type of person. Second type of person is somebody who lives beyond their means. Even if there was no COVID, they're a time bomb waiting to happen. Eventually, they've got, I used to always joke, I used to collect my own rent back in the day. My tenants always had a nicer car than me. They had a better TV, better stereo. They always had, all the goodies, but I owned the home. And so go figure. So these type of people, if you loan them money, you're going to get yourself in big trouble, because these people will burn through that money and they'll never be able to afford to pay you back. So for those type of people, I'd usually do what I call a soft landing. And what I mean by that is I try to figure out a way to leave them in a way better spot than if they had never met me and if the bank just took their home from them. And so I'd always make sure, if they had very little equity, I'd always make sure that they had money for a down payment on their next, or not down payment, because I wasn't going to let them buy another house, so they already couldn't afford, but a damage deposit, that's what I'm looking for, a damage deposit for a rental property. I'd give them a couple months rent, money for some food, make sure they were in a good spot, and then I would buy their home. And there's a number of different ways to do that. And once again, I know some of you don't have a lot of cash. So instead of buying their home, you could wholesale the deal. If you don't know what that is, that means you're putting the home under contract. You're basically putting a clause in there to protect yourself, so you're not obligated to buy that home. And then you're going to go find somebody else. So imagine you found a home. I'm just going to make up totally fictitious numbers here to make it really easy numbers. Let's say you found a home worth $200,000 and you can get it for $100,000, but you don't have $100,000 and you don't have the ability to qualify for $100,000. You're going to put this thing under contract. You're going to put a clause in there saying subject to approval by my partner, and your partner is going to be somebody like me. And then you're going to call up somebody with money that you know can do that deal, and you're going to say, hey, Mike, or hey, Chuck, I've got this property. I can get it for $100,000. It should be worth $200,000. Here's proof. I got a realtor to do a comparative market analysis for me. Here's other homes in the area that sold for $200,000. if you're willing to give me $20,000, I'm just making up round numbers here, could be 10, could be 5, could be $15,000, whatever you and I agree on. If you're willing to give me $20,000, I'm willing to assign that contract to you. And what that means is I'm going to cut you a check for whatever we agree on, and then I'm going to go do the deal. Whatever I make, but you make that money no matter what. And even if I totally screw up the deal and I lose money, you still get to keep that $20,000 that I paid you. So that's one way to do a deal without having a dime in your bank account. But then you might get even a little bit more sophisticated. You might call me up and say, hey, Mike, I found this deal, there's 100,000 profit in it, but you know what? I don't want only 20,000. I want to be a partner. I want some equity in this deal. Will you be my money partner? If you put up all the cash, I'll do the work. I'll help get this thing on the market, and we'll split the profits. So now you just got a raise from $20,000. You just made $50,000. There's a little bit more risk because if we screw up the deal and it doesn't make the money you thought, then you might not even make that $20,000 that you might have made wholesaling, but potentially you're going to get a raise doing it. And then there's a third option. Maybe you go and you say, I'm not even giving this to Mike at all. He's doing fine. I'm not going to Mike. Instead, I'm going to go to a hard money lender. And if you find a hard money lender or some private lenders, they may find, if that's a good enough deal, they don't really care that much about your credit. They care about that deal. And I've had hard money lenders that if there's enough equity in a deal, they loan you 100% of the money needed to take down that deal based on the fact that that was a really solid deal. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to do this, by the way. Even if you're thinking, oh, I can't do this, I've got no money. There's a bunch of different ways you can do this stuff. You just have to have the training. It's not the money that's going to hold you back. You just need to know what you're doing. So anyway, foreclosure fixers, like I said, a lot of times I'd be sitting across the table and I see a stack of all these other marketing materials that other people sent out, and I outmaneuvered them just by being going at it from just a little bit different angle. So one of the things I want to really make sure that you know is that the more creative you can get, sometimes just doing a little tiny tweak will mean you're going to make a lot more money in this industry and get a lot more business. The other thing that happened that's really cool, and the other thing I love to teach, it's so important to create a win-win. Every deal you do from now on, at least if you're listening to me and Chuck, every deal you do should be a win for the other person in the deal. And so many people try to go in for the home run, and they don't want to give them anything, and they just want to leave. They end up leaving these people in a really bad spot. Well, consider this. A lot of these people, let's say I sat across the table from somebody who just lost their job because the place they were working at got shut down. Well, guess what? These people worked with a whole bunch of other people that just got laid off, and they're all in the same boat. So a lot of times I would help one person, and they send me 5 or 6 or 7 of their friends. And so making a little bit less on a paycheck, but getting 7 of them made a lot more money than that one home run. And so it's super important to always make sure you create a win. And then the other great news is, guess what? When people are on their way down, I mean, it kind of sucks for them, but guess what? They bounce back. And if you are in touch with them and you help them out on the way down and you keep in touch with them, guess what? On the way back, you might be able to sell them a home or creatively put them in a rent-to-own situation or come up with some way to get them back into home ownership sooner than later. And they're going to go through you and become a client for you along with their friends. So these are some of the things you want to look at. Now, remember I said we're talking right now, the big pictures we're talking about what I call the trifecta. So part 1 of the trifecta, pre-foreclosure, finding people that are in trouble. You can get those lists of people whose homes are going to auction. That's one way to do it. If you can't help them, then the second part of the trifecta is you actually go to the auctions. And like I said, at these auctions, there's bank foreclosures and there's county foreclosures, which are the tax deeds. And then we have the third part of the trifecta, and this is a really cool thing that very few people know about. Usually when I mention even to sophisticated investors, they have no clue about this. And it's called overages. And what an overage is, it's also called surplus funds. It's called different things in different parts of the country. When we go to these auctions, let's say the opening bid on a home is $5,000. And let's say it sells for $50,000. That first $5,000, that belongs to the county fair and square. That's their property taxes. That's what's owed to them. But the additional $45,000, that actually belongs to the previous homeowner. And very few of these previous homeowners have any clue that this money is owed to them. They're certainly not going to the auction and happily watching their home get auctioned off. They're as far away from that as possible. They don't even want to know what their home sold for. To them, that's just adding salt to the wound. So they have no clue. And believe it or not, the county makes very little attempt to track these people down because guess what? There's a statute of limitations. And once that statute of limitations ends, the county gets to keep that as their slush fund. They get to do whatever they want. Who knows I don't even want to know what they do with that money. But they do not want it to go back to the homeowner. They want to keep it. And so a really cool strategy is to find out, get a list of these people that are owed money, say, hey, I know somebody owes you $45,000. If you're willing to share that with me, I'm willing to do the paperwork, and I'll find this money for you, and you'll get a check. And you only pay me if I'm successful in getting you this money. And so imagine somebody just lost their home. They're probably, if the opening bid was $5,000, that means they don't even have $5,000 to save their home. So what kind of financial position are they in? Probably not a very good one. And so if you go find these people and say, listen, I know somebody owes you this money. If you're willing to give me 20, 30, 40, 50%, whatever you negotiate. Once again, this is all negotiable. I've got a friend of mine charges 40%. And he actually, a lot of these people, by the way, are going to be a little skeptical. They're going to think, they're not going to trust you at first. They're not going to believe you. But he actually gives them 10% up front. So he says, listen, you're owed $45,000. I'm going to give you $4,500 right now. And then but you've got to sign these papers and give me limited power of attorney, and I'm going to go get the rest of this money for us. And then he'll split it with them. One of my other friends who does this full time, her smallest paycheck was $21,000 doing this, and she's been doing it for about 3 years. So this could be very, very lucrative. It's a great win-win and requires almost no money. You need enough money to buy the list. In some places it's free. In other places you might have to pay $50. Sometimes you might need a skip tracer, which is somebody who tracks people down. You might have to hire them. In some counties, you have to hire a lawyer. You're not allowed to do it yourself. You have to delegate it. But in other places, you literally could do this with pretty much no money out of your pocket. And so these are some of the top strategies that I see really going strong. This trifecta is a no-brainer because you're taking one list and monetizing it 3 different ways and helping other people as you do it. It's really, really cool. I really like wholesaling. We talked a little bit about that. Putting stuff under contract. If you don't have a lot of money, find somebody else to sell that deal to. Find joint venture partners, raise money. These are all the things that are going to make you a successful investor in these kind of crazy times that we're in right now. And I'm going to open up to Chuck. Chuck's been so silent in the background there. I thought he was going to interrupt me. So I'm going to see if he has any questions, because I want to get a feel. I want to make sure I explain things kind of clearly here.
Well, you do talk fast. So you get a lot of information out in a very short period of time. And I know people really appreciate that. So one question I've got is, you were talking earlier about that you don't leave people like in the lurch. Like, so if you got somebody that's getting ready to lose their house, they barely have enough money, what do you do with them? You want to find a way that they can land on their feet at least and not be homeless. So what are some of the different kinds of strategies that you've done or others have done that you know about where you've been able to help somebody get to that next, wherever they're going to go to? What's some of the strategies you've used to do that?
Yeah, so I have a bunch. One of them is, just what I said, just wholesaling it, saying, hey, let's just find a cash buyer. Sometimes it'd be me being the cash buyer. Other times it'd be other people. Sometimes I would do what's called a subject to. And what a subject to deal is, basically you're taking over the existing mortgage. If you're doing that, you're going to have to pay off the arrears. And like I said, I want to give them some money in their pocket so they have a place to go. Sometimes I would do, some pretty creative stuff. Like I'd say, listen, you've got some equity in your home. Why are you why are you going to lose this home when you've got equity in there? Why didn't you put this on why didn't you list this home months ago before we got to this point? And so sometimes I would actually put up some cash. And I say, why don't we fix this home? Let's paint it. Let's make it look prettier. And I'm going to be a partner in this. And we're going to go and fix this up, make it sell quickly, make it sell, for top dollar, because we're going to make it look nice. And then we'll split some of the proceeds. And depending on how much money I had to put in, that would determine how much I would take out of it. But now some of these people would walk away with cash and, have another place to go. I also, because I've been in the industry so long and I know so many other people, other times I would put them in a rent to own. Like some of my other friends might have a rent to own going on. Say, hey, listen, you know what, instead of going, having to go from homeowner to renter, why don't we put you in a rent to own situation? We'll get you back on your feet. We'll put you into a home that's affordable to you so that when you do eventually get to the owning part, you're not going to get yourself in trouble again. And so there's a lot of different options. There's a lot of different ways to play with it. My favorite was always to keep people in their home. And so if I could, trust that they were in a good enough position to, if they had really good credit going into this and just something, like I said, something bad happened to them. Sometimes obviously right now, there's going to be a lot of job loss, but sometimes people get sick. Sometimes people get divorced. These bad things sometimes happen to good people, unfortunately. But they get back on their feet. And so if we can keep them in the house and just pay off the arrears and keep them there, and of course I'll make interest on it. I won't actually buy the home. If you ever do that, by the way, you want to make sure that when you loan the money, you're registering a mortgage on the property to protect your interest. In case they don't pay you, you want to have the ability to get your money back. But in all honesty, anybody who I chose, to loan money to, I've been in this industry a long time, so I've become a pretty good underwriter. But I've never lost money loaning money to other people, because I have the ability to know enough about the real estate to figure out what the value is of it, and know that there's enough equity to make it worth my while to safely loan the money. And but there's so many different strategies you can do with that to help either people stay in their home or give them that soft landing, as I like to say. And like I said, sometimes it was just a matter of, hey, let's fix up the home. Let's put this on the MLS. Like, let's get this thing sold. Why are you going to let the county take this from you? Why are we going to let the bank take it from you? But these people were just fearful, and a lot of them just they shut their eye. They just shut their eyes to it. They won't open up their mail. They don't know where they are in the foreclosure process. So it takes somebody who's got, who goes in there and they're unbiased, because they're just used to having people all day long. They're either vultures trying to steal their home, or collection agents. Like they're everybody who's trying to talk to them is against them. And when I would go in there, and I was the only person on their side, and I give them clear advice on, hey, here's what some of your options are. And so it was not only a great money maker, and didn't just help a lot of people, but I had one specific lady who, probably a year or two after I had helped her, she just called me up to thank me out of the blue. And it was long after the deal happened. And she said, Mike, I never told you this, but the day that I received your foreclosure fixers flyer, I was actually thinking of killing myself that day. And so when you hear stories like that, and you know what a difference you're making in somebody else's life, it's just magic. And when they started to close down the economy, my first thoughts are, here we go again. We're going to have so many people in trouble. And so I decided that, I'm going to set up my foreclosure fixers business again. And then I thought, well, I could do that, and I might be able to, help 50, 60, who knows, 100 people this year. I don't know. I haven't got to that point yet. It's not set up yet. But then I also thought, what if I train a whole bunch of people to learn the different strategies, the different ways to implement this, the different ways to go and be a problem solver and help other people. And so, I'm basically doing a 3-day event, November 20th to 22nd, where I'm going to teach as many people as I can how to do what I do, so they can go out and I want to create a kind of a movement of ethical real estate investors that are out there, making a difference, helping other people, and getting paid for it, by the way. You're not doing this just as charity. You're going to get paid well for what you do, but you're going to help other people. And so I'm actually doing a training, and I actually did one of them a few months ago, and I charged $1,000 for it, and we had a really good turnout. But then I was thinking, if I really want to make this movement as large as possible, what I want to do is get as many people involved. And I know right now, not everybody's got, $1,000 just sitting there. So I've decided to make it's $97 for all 3 days. So it's practically free. And I just want people to have enough skin in the game that, one, they're going to show up, and two, they're going to, put value on it and hopefully go and implement what they learn. But for your audience, if you don't mind, I'd love to give them make that even cheaper. We'll make it $47 for them. So it's like such a no-brainer that if you're thinking of doing real estate investing and you want to learn what's working right now, I want to give you all the tools. And I know they're going to get a lot, obviously, working with you and your people, all your amazing speakers on your summit. But I want to give them some more, a whole other level as well on top of that, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. And then how can they register for that? How are they going to find out about that?
Yeah, what they can do is just email me at info@mikewolfmastery.com, info@mikewolfmastery.com. Tell me that you saw me on Chuck Sutherland's summit, and I'll give you I'll send you an invoice for $47 instead of the $97.
Yeah. So you could just say I was on the summit, the real estate expert summit, or the real estate summit, and in your email, then that way he'll know that you came here and give you the discount. Okay. And I
Exactly.
highly recommend it. I got to tell you, I have at one point in my life, I coached and consulted for real estate groups who had people that were learning the business. And one of the things I found was that the education, it is not cheap. It can be very expensive. So for a small amount of money, you can get the best of Mike Wolf for 3 days. I think that is like a super bargain. You know,
And like I said, I talk fast. So imagine how much info I'm going to give in 3 full days of this. So, but I always like to give as much value as I can. And I know I've always, quite often when I'm on these summits and podcasts, you only have so much time and
yeah,
there's so much I want to teach. But 3 days allows me to really go, dive deep into the different strategies, teach you exactly how I do it. We give out some of the paperwork and some of the marketing materials I've used to attract these people that were in trouble that we could help. So yeah, 3 days gives me ample time to still speak fast, but give you lots of information through the
all
fire
right.
hose.
Well, speak slow and give that email address one more time.
Yeah, so it's info@mikewolfmastery.com. So it's wolf just like the animal, Mike Wolf Mastery, mastery.com. Or you can
So
just reach out to Chuck, and he of course knows how to reach me too.
yeah, that would be Mike Wolf Mastery, or mine as well, which is Chuck at creativerealestatenetwork.com. I'll be glad to pass you along if you come my way. Again, Chuck at creativerealestatenetwork.com. Thank you, Mike, for being on our summit. I was so excited that you had agreed to be on the summit because I've known you for several years now, and I've really never had an opportunity to hear you talk. So
Oh, this is great, and I'm glad we're getting to know each other better. And I know we're going to be able to serve and support each other and help a lot of people together. So
yeah, and I really acknowledge your way of doing business. There's so many things that you can do that can help people and make you money at the same time. And in fact, I assert that if you are treating people badly in a deal, for the most part, those deals don't stay together.
no.
And if they do stay together, you end up with a bad reputation. I love it that you're doing ethical real estate buying. I think it's something whose time has come. So I really,
I think sorry to interrupt. I think the irony is that you actually make more money the more people you help, the word gets around. And I've been like I said, I've been in this for 31 years, and I can't, and I'm sure how many people come and go from this industry, and some of them get their home run, they have their big success, and then they get a bad reputation though, and then they're gone. And my company is named after me. It's Mike Wolf Mastery, and I'm very proud of what I do. There's so many companies that they come out there, and one year they're called something, and they get a bad reputation. They come back the next year with a whole different name. It drives me crazy, and I think it's great. There's people like you that are, in this industry, because there's so many people that give this industry a black eye. But it's great that there's ethical real estate investors out there that are doing good things and sharing their knowledge and just making this a better industry, because that's
right.
one of the things that's driven me crazy all these years is so many sharks come and go, and then people look at us like we're used car salesmen. No offense to used car salesmen, but that's how they perceive us.
But you're right. The more you give, and not like give like as a sacrifice, but the more you contribute to others, it really does come back. I mean, I've had people come back to me and with deals that I wasn't looking for, and they would walk in the door and say, "Hey, I've heard about this deal. I just thought of you, and I can get this at a really good price, but also with really good terms," as an example. And I never would have saw that deal if I'd been a jerk. So
Exactly.
and I got to tell you, I want to maximize the contribution I can make to people while I'm on this earth, because this is not a long-term gig we're in terms of being alive. So we might as well give something to others as we go.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think now more than ever, we're going to see a lot of people struggling, and a lot of people who there's going to be a lot, the after effects are going to be, lots of depression and stress and just so many people in a really bad spot. And this is our chance to really shine and help a lot of these people out of a tough predicament. And I'm excited for and very optimistic for the future, and can't wait to make a difference, and just it just makes me so sad, when I see what's going on right now, and so many people so pessimistic about the future, and just not thinking there's anything good is going to happen. And I think it's going to be the opposite. But it's going to take an army of us people who are leaders to go and make a difference and show people the way.
All right, awesome. So that's Mike at MikeWolfMastery.com.
Yeah, or actually info at MikeWolfMastery.com.
What did I say?
You said Mike at Mike Wolf Mastery.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Info at MikeWolfMastery.com. Thanks. So again, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Chuck. It's always a pleasure.
All right. So coming up on the next segment of the Real Estate Expert Summit 2020 is a guest, Ridgely Goldsboro. And he's going to talk about the different mind types that you need to understand in order to be able to know what your mind type is and how you can maximize your abilities and what other people's mind type is, so that you can deal effectively with them. And I can tell you that I had a concussion about 7 years ago, and since then, oh no, that's not true. I forgot. I had the concussion 16 years ago, and then I started having after effects of it 7 years ago. But so I've been studying the mind, studying the brain, and knowing how other people think and how you think, really, not how you think, but how you really think, can make an enormous difference in your life and in your investing. So that will be the next session coming up at the top of the hour. We'll see you then.